so it was uncommon for them to lock doors back at home. They were also incredibly kind and trusting to everyone, never considering hidden bad intentions. Anyway, the night in question started very normally. We had planned on having a wine and a movie night. This was kind of like a weekly tradition for us. We would pick out some stupid movie, get takeout, and get a little buzz after having a long week of classes and work. At this point, it was early November, so we had been doing this for several months with no issues. By 8:30ish, we had all settled on the couch in our living room and had started a comedy. With it being November, it was already completely dark outside. That is, other than our porch light, which we could see from the small window at the very top of our door. None of us were tall enough to see anything out of our window anyway, so we just relied entirely on our peephole. It took a great amount of effort for me to convince my roommates to check the peephole before opening the door. This was a talk that we had after one roommate had opened the door for our neighbour's very drunk friend, who threw up all over our main floor. That was not a nice day. And not long after ordering our takeout, we heard banging on our front door. Jess made a joke about how the delivery guy must have taken a helicopter to get here this quickly, especially considering the place that we ordered from was very close to campus. It was not a typical delivery guy's knock either, but between the few glasses of wine and carefree attitude of the night, we didn't really pay too much mind, I guess. In any case, it was my roommate's turn to pay this week. Her name is Meg, and out of the group, she was the smallest, barely 5 foot. She is also the most trusting person that I think I've ever met. She ran up to her room to grab her wallet. This took at most 30 seconds, and during this time the banging continued and was getting more aggressive. I figured maybe it was cold or he had other stuff to do, so we yelled up to get her to hurry, and the banging continued to get harder and harder, and it was at this point that I started to feel a bit uneasy. When she came back down, I told her to check the peephole before opening it, as she was usually the one to just open it. She got to the door and looked out the peephole. She could barely reach it on a good day, so when she said that she couldn't see anything, my other roommate and I got up to help. My second roommate, Jess, is a very funny person, and there are very few things that she would not turn into a joke. But Jess got to the door before I did, looked out of the peephole, the person on the other side still banging away, mind you, and when she turned to look at me, I knew instantly that something was wrong. She looked incredibly confused, a look that I had rarely seen from her, as she was very clever. Within a second, she had gone back in for another look as well. This time her face was not confused. She looked afraid. This made my stomach knot up. She's a horror movie fanatic and she doesn't scare easily. "I think someone's covering the peephole," she sort of whisper shouted at us. This time I looked out the peephole, seeing that, yes, something was covering the peephole. We could still see the porch light shining through the window at the top though, so we knew that it was not a case of it being too dark to be able to see what was going on. By now, our other roommate, Anne.
So the secret to becoming a millionaire is right under everyone's nose. Now, when you figure it out...
Anne had walked down the hall trying to find out what was going on. She was easily the drunkest of the 4 of us. Even sober though, she seemed to think that she was invincible. "What's your problem? Open the door, the poor dude has hands full," was Anne's wise idea. Jess and I explained what was going on though, and at this point, Meg, Jess and I all had a bad gut feeling that something was wrong. That's when Jess asked Meg to check the website that she had ordered our food from. And Meg had actually not placed the order. Between the wine and the silliness earlier in the night, she had selected our food but didn't finish the last step. The banging continued as our situation started to sink in. Anne still did not seem to grasp what was happening and tried to unlock the door. "Stop!" I snapped at her. Immediately, I knew it was too loud. For the first time, the person on the other side of the door spoke. They said, "This is the police. Open the door now. We have a few questions to ask you." The man's voice practically growled back at us. This sobered me up right away. I looked over at Meg, who was already welling up, then at Jess, who had gone completely pale. At this point, Anne also realized something was not right and froze, which is the least Anne thing that she could have done. The banging was getting increasingly harder, to the point that we could physically see the door breathe with each hit. Meg took Anne upstairs, trying to calm each other down and check if there was a police car parked outside and make sure our windows were locked. And though it was hard to do, it was possible to get onto part of our roof that made it possible to get to Anne's window. We heard a window slam, immediately knowing that it had been Anne's window. Being a bit of a thrill-seeker, Anne had taken her window screen in order to sit on the roof, and for some reason this made what was happening very real. "Show me your badge and then we'll open the door," I yelled back. Instead of a response, it sounded like the guy started to kick the door now. I told Jess to call the police and ask if they had an officer dispatched to our address. Jess was shaking so badly at this point that it was hard for her to dial. Now, Meg had come back down the stairs, sharing that there was no police car parked outside. Anne trailed behind her, standing on the stair landing, trying to get a good look outside the window at the top of the door. At that moment, my blood ran cold too, because I remembered that the man at the door had said we and not I. Jess had just come to the same realization too. She sprinted out the back door, a large sliding glass door, which she double-checked it was locked, and thankfully it had been. She drew the curtains as well, trying to minimize the chance of them seeing in. Within a minute, the knocking started at our back door as well. Thank God she had closed the curtains, because the idea